Yes. Well, Lindy and I and Miss Colling, we'll probably be seated together, but if you want to be our
That'd be
fourth,
awesome.
because we talk about students
Yeah, I want
and adult things.
I like all three of you.
We'll all sit together.
Yeah.
Okay, so this slide represents the journey of two people. I'm sure you've all heard of Lewis and Clark, but you probably know less than you think about Lewis and Clark. I have this guess that what you picture is two guys plus some Indian girl, Sacagawea, plus her kid that she was carrying the whole time on a canoe, going that way, and that's not right. We'll fix that mistaken image. Remember, Jefferson bought the Louisiana Territory, but he bought it sight unseen. He didn't know what was out there. That was beyond the old border of the United States. It's like you buying a car online before kicking the tires. And remember, man, you open the hood and you look and say, yeah, that looks, wiggle some wires. That's what it means to be a man. Plus kick the tires, make it look like you know what you're doing. Then buy the thing. And the seller will be like, he's a man. They bought this huge chunk of land, doubling the size of the United States, and then sent people to say like, what did we just buy? Right? And so Jefferson authorizes two people, Lewis and Clark, but it wasn't just those two. It was those two leading a group of hundreds of soldiers on this expedition, which took 3 years. Okay, and yes, they had boats, which was effective sometimes and not so effective other times. Right? It helps to have water if you have boats, which worked for a little while with the Missouri River, but then right about here, that was the end of the using of the boats. Okay, 3 years. Any of you been to North Dakota? They spent a winter in North Dakota, and they didn't go anywhere. They just settled in for the winter, thanks to the hospitality of a Native American group that they ran into, the Mandan of North Dakota, and that's where they met Sacagawea. Know her name, Sacagawea, and who did guide them through the Pacific Northwest, the mountains of the Pacific Northwest, and she did carry a kid. This woman did it all, right? And they reached the Pacific. They became, I think this is right, the first Americans to see the Pacific Ocean. Okay. Now, when they're traveling out here, they are not in American territory. They are in disputed territory. Because remember, the Louisiana Territory ends here-ish. Okay, so but they kept going into this area. What is this area known as at the time? You know? It was the Oregon Territory, right? And this was disputed land, right? Various entities claimed it was theirs. The Spanish said, "Well, it's ours. It's part of New Spain," and the British said, "Well, actually, it's ours. It's part of Canada." And the Russians said, "Well, actually, it's ours. It's part of this thing called Alaska." And we, the United States, sort of claimed like, "Well, actually, we just bought it." And never mind the Indians who actually lived there, who said, "Us." And everyone was like, oh, you're so adorable. You think you're big people." Anyway, and they finally returned and reported to Jefferson all that they had seen. But this was a well chronicled. This was similar to Columbus's second voyage. Remember, the first voyage was 3 boats. The second voyage was about 100 boats. This was a military expedition, seen similarly to what Columbus did. Okay, any questions here? Awesome. Let's keep going. Meanwhile, Britain is still in a war with France. Now draw that. No, don't draw that. Good God. What a colossal waste of time. But let's just kind of do a little. We don't do much military history, but let's just do a little. So this hand represents a naval vessel. Okay, here's the front, here's the back. One's the stern and one's the port. I don't know. Okay, it's a British boat. Here it's going this way, but where are the guns?
On the side.
On the side. They have not invented this thing called a turret yet. Anyone know what a turret is? What's a turret? It's a gun on a little turning thing. Perfectly stated, right? They have not figured out that maybe if you put a gun on a wheel, you can point the gun at. Nope. It's just a bunch of cannons sticking out the sides, both sides of a boat. If you had one row of cannons, 2 rows, oh, 3 rows, whoa. Okay, 3 rows of battleship, that's a bad mofo. Okay, that's like today's aircraft carrier. That's the thing you don't want to mess with. Okay, so you can picture, here's the British fleet. They're about to engage with the French and Spanish fleet. Right, here they come. So picture it. Here's the French boat and here's the British boat. What do you want to do? You want to turn. You want to turn so now you can fire on them, but they can't fire on you. So what the French want to do is turn. But what you also want to do is get in front or in back. So now you can shoot them, but they can't shoot you. Right? So a naval battle was like, There it is. There is one of the great naval battles in human history is the Battle of Trafalgar. I don't know who won. Probably the British. It's a good guess. Who cares? This war that's been going on since the British invaded France to stop the French Revolution. That's when this whole thing started. Okay, is at sea and it's on land, and it erupts into this huge European war. And both, this is why this is part of American history. Both the British and the French engaged with American boats that were headed to the other. You understand? Because we're trading with both. So here comes a boat that's trading with Britain, the French would stop it. Here comes a boat that's going to France, the British would stop it. Okay, so that's how we got kind of sucked in to this war between these European empires. So the British and the French both seized a boat. So there's a one row. That's a one row naval vessel at the time. Okay, pretty cool. I'm sure you've seen that Pirates of the Caribbean crap. One good movie in that entire franchise. You know they're making another one without Jack Sparrow.
Well, one is not going to be any good.
Oh yeah, like the other ones were really good.
Yeah, they were fantastic.
Oh my God, they were awful. Awful movies. Awful.
I've never watched them, so I have no idea.
Yeah, the first one's okay, and then they get just stupid. Okay. Any questions here? This is leading somewhere. So here are the British and the French, and they're fighting wars, and there's other wars going on. It's kind of a cool map because you'll notice here there is no such thing as Germany. The United States is older than Germany. Germany became a nation in about 1848. The United States is older than Italy. I'm sure you've heard this before, and it's a bunch of crap that the United States is one of the youngest nations on earth. No, it isn't. It's one of the oldest nations on earth. No other nation has a constitution that matches our age, right? Our constitution is older than Britain's. Britain doesn't have one, so that helps. We are one of the oldest nations. China's got us by a few thousand years, but other than that, we're sort of competitive with other nations at the time. So Germany's not a thing. It's just a bunch of little kingdoms here. There's this thing called the Ottoman Empire, which would finally end in World War I, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But Team Blue is fighting Team Red. Team Blue is fighting Team Red. And they're both stopping American boats from reaching the other. And what was our response? This is our response. We had 3 responses. Okay. So the first one is sort of interesting. It was called the Embargo Act. The United States said, fine, if you're attacking our boats going to the other country, then we just won't trade with anyone anymore. Yeah. Okay, so imagine every day you bring $5 for lunch, and every day the bully comes and takes you by the ankles and turns you upside down and shakes you real hard, and $5 comes out and he takes your money, And every day. And so finally you reach a conclusion. I know what to do. I just won't bring lunch money anymore. Yeah. Beautiful solution, right?
Then you don't get to eat.
Yeah, okay. Right? When the U.S. passed this law, the Embargo Act, stopping all trade with all nations, what the U.S. quickly figured out was, wow, we're the nation that suffers because of that. Okay, so the Embargo Act was quickly replaced by this thing called the Non-Intercourse Act. The Non-Intercourse Act reduced the nations that we were not trading with to 2, Britain and France. Okay, that makes more sense. Okay, so far so good? Add part number 3, the Mason Act. Can you finish it? If either Britain or France agreed to leave the U.S. alone, ... Now make a prediction. Make a prediction. Go ahead.
We would resume trade with whoever
Very
wanted us
good.
along.
Exactly. Whichever one of you promises first, we will resume trade with you, and we will not trade with the other. Now, who's first? Now, could you take a guess? Do you know anything about? It's about 1808-ish. Do you know what's coming? 1809. And then what? 1810. And then what? 1811. And then what?
It's the French and Indian War.
1812.
Wow.
There's something that happened in 1812. Like a war or something.
War of 18.
What'd they call it?
The War of
The
War
18.
War of
1812.
1812. Who was it against? Britain, which means who promised to leave our boats alone?
The friend.
The French. And the British didn't. And then we went to war against Britain. Does it all make sense now?
Yeah.
Yes, it does. Any questions there? Okay, let's make this even more complicated. This is all leading to the War of 1812. Okay? In this chunk of land right here, it's called the Ohio River Valley. Okay? It's part of the U.S., but there were Native Americans out there that didn't like it very much. This person is probably, could have been, the greatest threat to American westward expansion in our nation's history, had history gone slightly differently. But he figured out something that few other Native Americans figured out. I'm wondering if you can figure out what he figured out. Can you figure out what he figured out? All right, so let me just start it and let's see if you can finish. There's a tribe here and a different tribe there and a different tribe there and a different tribe there and there and there and there and there and there and there. Yes. Yes. Stop thinking of us as different tribes. We are one people. We have a common foe, the Americans. Let's think of it that way. Let's call it the Indian Confederation. And it worked. It worked for a while. For a while. The Indian Confederation was able to successfully defeat an American army in a battle. Not this battle, the other battles. Okay? So the U.S. had to figure out, good God, we got to deal with this guy. And sent a huge military force to Indiana, to a place called Tippecanoe. The American military was led by this guy named Harrison. He would later become president, William Henry Harrison. His nickname was Tippecanoe. Tippecanoe was called Tippecanoe because the American military hid in the river here, and as the Native Americans approached on their canoes, the Americans tipped them over and got the Indians wet. And if there's one thing an Indian couldn't stand, it was to be wet. It was like, that's it, we're done. My eagle feathers are all wet, let's go. That was a lie. I lied. I don't know why it's called Tippecanoe. I don't know why anything's called anything if you think about it. When you were young, we were like, why is it called milk? I don't know. One thing to note here, he escaped. He's like George Washington. Washington really didn't win all that many battles, but he won one. The last one. That's the one that counts. That's not exactly true, but Washington lost a bunch of battles, but he never got caught. He never got caught. This guy, he escaped to Canada, and he would live to fight another day during the War of 1812. So during the War of 1812, the United States fought Britain, but it also fought Native Americans, a coordinated group of Native Americans. Okay, any questions here? Last slide. We're just, oh, no. Oh, yeah, that was the last slide. That's right. Yep. I wanted to take a slide with you or not. So, okay, we're done. Very good. You will find yourself in your one of 6 groups for a little bit of document analysis. Okay, so get back into your 7 groups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Go.
If I'm alone.
Is there anyone who still has not turned in the field trip permission slip that is going?
Me, Riley.
Did you fix it?
Yeah, I was gone last week.
So he's not going. He's not going. Riley, Zach's not going. You're it. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Can I come in today to finally finish up my blue essay?
That'd be great.
I wanted to do it last
Go ahead and circle the wagons. Move your desks. Make it into a distinct group.
Oh my God.
Bunch of people just walked in. Zach Abbott walked in. And Avery.
Oh.
Roderick, you walk in. Tracy.
Yeah, here.
These are the same groups we've been in, right? The members changed, but your number didn't. Hey. Yeah, she was by herself yesterday. Okay, what we're doing is this. So you started this, right? You created a spreadsheet, whether it was on your computer or on a piece of paper.
When did we do that?
The last time we did this was Thursday? Friday, maybe? Thursday or Friday? Thursday. It was Thursday.
I was in Madison on Thursday.
Our goal is to get through documents uno y dos of these documents. And then that would mean I could give you a new mini writing prompt on the issue of taxes and spending. You have already been assigned a mini writing prompt, a 2-paragraph thingy on the Sedition Act, on government attempts to limit speech, and you're supposedly in the middle of writing that 2-paragraph bad boy, siding with either the Federalist view that attempts at speech are warranted sometimes, and the Democratic Republican view that no, any attempt at limiting speech is a violation of your rights and should not be allowed. So supposedly you're in the middle of that. After today, I would be able to assign you 2 more paragraphs on the Federalist view that taxes were justified, that government spending was justified, and that debt is not bad at times, and or the Democratic Republican view that taxes were dangerous, that taxes led to rebellion, and that debt is irresponsible spending. That's what I could do, and that's what I will do. Okay. Any questions before we attack? So here we go. I'm now looking at this group right here. That one right there, U4. Okay. And away we go. So which document are we doing? 1. She's done. And who's our speaker? Hamilton. Who dat? He's a Federalist. Okay, so are we okay? Okay, you should say 1, Hamilton, Federalist. What's the issue? Taxes. The issue is taxes. And in some sense, spending. Taxes and spending. Government taxes and spending. Okay. Let's skip the document. I mean, it's document 1. All right, let's skip the document evidence for now. Specifically, what were we talking about here? What's the actual historical artifact that we're talking about in this document, this topic? You guys know? Yes, national banks, very good. Anything else? I heard it. Whiskey tax, yep, national banks, Whiskey Act. Anything else?
Taxes affecting businesses.
I would call that more analysis. Was there any other specific thing that was created at the time? I mean, I think we might have it, right? The National Bank was created by Hamilton, the Whiskey Act, the tariff of the time. Yep, that's a historical event. That's a historical artifact that is being addressed. Let's see. What was this 5-part plan? Oh, federal government assumption of state debts. That was part of the plan. Federal government assumption of state debts. The federal government would pay for all the state's debts.
Isn't that part of the national bank though?
The national bank's role would be that is where the money collected by the government would be deposited into this thing called the national bank. Okay. I think that's pretty good for now. So there's your historical evidence. So you should have all jotted down: whiskey tax, the creation of national banks, federal government assumption of state debts. Assumption means taking over. I'm going to assume your debt. I'm going to pay off your debt. Right? Good enough. Hooray or boo hiss? Hooray. Awesome. I mean, not only was Hamilton in favor of these ideas, he's the author of them. He thought of it. What kind of a sicko would say, I'm going to come up with a national bank? What a terrible idea I came up with. That's weird. Okay. Why? 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 Wow, nothing. Nothing. Wow, very impressive. Why? Why is the Whiskey Act a good idea? Why is federal assumption of state debts a good idea? Why is the creation of national bank a good idea? What does he say? Yeah, skip that part. Why? Why are these things a good idea? What? Right, you have these things you have to pay for. How else are you going to get it? Does government just print money? Hey, let's make $1 million more. Okay, ka-ching. All right, what are the scissors? Cut it up into dollar bills. $1 million more. Oh, big question. Awesome.
Inflation.
Love that.
That's not how money works.
Hold off on that question. Okay. So you have these worthwhile things that you need to pay for. Okay, very good. Anything else? Does he say anything else? Isn't debt bad? Bad debt is bad. Good debt is good. Right? At the time. Why was it good that all these states were in debt? What did they get out of it?
Freedom.
Yeah, freedom. They won the war. They won the Revolutionary War because of debt. That's good. That's good debt. Okay. What else does government pay for? Roads, right? A military. Yep. All these things that you need to build. You're going to go into debt, but then you got to pay off that debt. Okay. Anything else? Those are great. Okay. So that's the why. That's also the document evidence. When you're talking about this is what Hamilton was saying, the why in the document evidence, It's sort of the same thing. Remember, don't quote. Don't quote. Okay? Can you synthesize? Is there anything else throughout American history? Now, let me pause for a second here and caution some of you. Some of you are guilty of what I'm about to say. Most of you aren't, but some of you did this. Imagine that you're telling me in your Blue Books essays, pretend you're, and then you tell me this weird story about how, what if the United States wanted to make a lunar base? And you make this hypothetical synthesis example. This is a history class. Don't make up an event. Use a real one. Use an actual historical event as your synthesis. Is there any other example of a tax that has ever been in existence ever, or good debt? Good luck figuring out those two. Man, these are elusive. Somewhere in 240 years of American history, find a tax. Or an example where the United States went into debt for a good reason. Here's a clue. Find any war ever. Ever. Anytime the U.S. has been in a war, we've gone into debt. And there's been a few. I think there's like a World War I and a World War II and
Was it all good?
World War III and
Like Vietnam. Was it
okay,
good?
so you're I think you could save that for the other side. You could save that for the other side. Okay. But for now, what we want is synthesis proving that debt is good, that taxes pay for things. Okay. Look up Medicare, look up Medicaid. These are look up Social Security. How many of you were born from other people? Other people led to you being created. Any of you in here? I think all of us, actually. I think all of us. Yep. That would mean that you have these things called parents. Parents? Yep. And you have these things called grandparents. And they're old. Grandparents are old people. And old people have this thing, yeah, maybe. And old people have this thing called Social Security. Social Security is a financial system. It's been called the greatest financial system ever created by the United States. It is old people money. When you're old. And he is right. How many of you have a job? You have a job. Oh, wow, look at that. Part of your check, even though you are a dependent, you live in someone else's household that provides for you, your paycheck, next time you get paid, look at the paycheck and look for the letters FICA, F-I-C-A. That's Social Security. You are paying for some old fart that lives in Florida right now. Right now, your money isn't being deposited, and when you retire, you get your money back. That's not how it works. Your money is immediately sent to some old guy or girl somewhere, and they use it and spend it. And then when you're old, supposedly, young people will pay for you. Okay? But this is a tax system. This takes taxes. And you could argue that that's a good idea. That's okay. Have we mastered document 1? Somewhat. Let's try document 2. All right, so here we go again. Starting over. So now I'm looking at that group right there. Okay. 2. Jefferson. So this is Madison v. Jefferson. Let's rock. Who's Jefferson?
He's Democratic.
Democratic Republican. By the way, Hamilton, at the time of this, was he also the Secretary of the Treasury? 1792. Yes, he was. So Hamilton's credibility was that he was also the Secretary of the Treasury. Jefferson's letter was 1794. Was he the Secretary of State at the time? I think he was. He may have resigned by this time. He resigned. He was so sick of Washington listening to Hamilton all the time that basically he said, well, you never listened to me. I quit. Okay. I'm not sure exactly when he quit. You could kind of investigate that. When did Jefferson quit as Secretary of State? If it was after December of 1794, that means that Jefferson, when he wrote this thing, was the Secretary of State, as well as a Democratic Republican. The issue's the same. Right? It's taxes and spending. Skip the document evidence for now. What does Jefferson have as evidence? I mean, largely it's the same evidence, but he's got something else going on. What happened? They taxed whiskey. What happened? Whiskey rebellion. There. Part of his argument. Well, you tell me, what was part of his argument? What's wrong with taxes? What do they lead to? Rebellion. Taxes lead to rebellion. Does he have any evidence? Tax whiskey, whiskey rebellion. Now, in your Blue Book essay, don't do this. Don't say an example of this is the whiskey rebellion. Okay, I know what happened at the whiskey rebellion, and you might know what happened at the whiskey rebellion. But people, I don't know if you know. I don't know if you know. And you don't know if I know that you know. And think about this. I don't even know if you know that I know that you know. And what about this? You don't even know if I know that you know that I know that you know. And I don't even know if you know that I know that you know that I know that you know. So, okay, I've been told to stop. All right, fine. You gotta fill in the gaps here. What happened, right? You gotta tell me what happened. Okay. Go beyond that a bit. Yes, whiskey rebelled. Corn's like, nah. They like plucked off and hit people in the eye. And like, quit that? Stop that. Okay. Okay. So, whiskey rebellion. Happy or sad? Sad. Taxes are bad.
Yeah.
I mean, we sort of answered the question here, but why? Why are taxes? Because they lead to rebellion. Okay. But he goes beyond that. He goes beyond that. Debt is bad. Debt is irresponsible spending. I mean, think about this. Why have governments spend all this money on things? Why not just let people spend it on their own? Why do we have Social Security? Why don't just old people, when they're not so old, save some money yourself? Why is it government's job to make sure that you have enough food when you're old? Do it yourself. Yes?
But when they're not old, they're still paying for other old people. So they pay for old people.
We're arguing Jefferson's side now.
I'm confused.
Jefferson believed that debt was irresponsible.
Most of people shouldn't have Social Security.
He would argue that Social Security is an infringement. It's too much government. Remember, Jefferson wanted less government. So fewer taxes, fewer government expenditures, less government spending. Okay? Can you come up with, as far as synthesis, a wasteful government program? Did you know that it took government studies to discover that if you sneeze with your eyeballs open, your eyes pop out? And you know how they discovered that? They experimented with cows. So now we know if you sneeze with your eyes open, your eyeballs pop out. So there you go.
Well, now,
I mean, are we all better off now that we know that? By the way, I have no idea if that's true. I may have made that up. But all you need to do is come up with wasteful government spending, a program that is dumb. For those of you who are fairly conservative, those of you who feel like Obama wasn't the greatest president ever, you're a Trump fan, fine. You know that one of the things that Trump has targeted is this thing called Obamacare. Wasteful. It's government money being spent on medical care. And the Republicans are opposed to Obamacare. They think it's wasteful. And synthesis can work both ways. I said this yesterday. You can go backwards. Has there been an event previous to the whiskey tax where taxes led to rebellion?
Some British one.
Very good. The Tea Act, all those British taxes. Pick 2 or 3. Go that way with synthesis. You can do that. Okay. In fact, by the end of the year, when we're writing Blue Book essays and I'm doing almost nothing and you're doing almost everything, that's sort of the only direction you'll be able to go. Is you'll have to look back for synthesis. Here, we're still so early, so a lot of times you have to kind of look forward. And the disadvantage is we haven't covered it yet. But now I can say to you, you can synthesize, and we've covered it. Awesome. Okay. How do we feel about this issue? If I were to give you another half sheet of paper and say, okay, I want you to write 2 more paragraphs about taxes and spending, the Federalist view, the Democratic Republican view, and you've got to be consistent. If you agreed with the Federalist view about the attempt to limit speech, you have to agree with the Federalist point of view on taxes and spending. It's got to be 2-0. If I were to do that, all right? Can I?
Sure.
I don't care what you say. That's what's happening.
No.
Okay, so another little half sheet here. Is this the right one? That's not the right one.
That's not a good idea.
We can go.
I've been in 2.
I know.
I'm just gonna give you this piece of paper and have it. Sorry.
No, the paper is so much more difficult than the video.
Oh,
I hate it. That's what I wrote about them. I wrote about
Well, it
them.
might receive. It's going to
Okay.
I did that on the paper.
Good effort.
Summer. So that's my summer.
I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm like
Massive graph.
days later than that right now. Yeah.
Yo.
Okay, we need to do a little bit of light editing here. So my apologies. So this is, you could kind of head this one, taxes and spending. That's the heading for this little half sheet. So it's thanks. The prompt should be taxes and spending. That's enough for now. Taxes and spending. That's your prompt. Is it a good idea or not? Right. So the first paragraph is the side you agree with. That's true. So let's say you agree with the Federalist point of view that taxes and spending are necessary. Okay. So your topic sentence would go something like this. Hamilton correctly argues that taxes and spending are necessary, period. Or if you agree with Jefferson, Jefferson correctly argues, or you probably should avoid Hamilton, Jefferson. The Federalists correctly argue, or the Democratic Republicans correctly argue that taxes and are dangerous and debt spending is irresponsible, period. Something like that, okay? Which you then provide document evidence. You get into, this is where you mention Hamilton or Jefferson. Don't say Hamilton or Jefferson in your topic sentence. They're the speakers of the documents. So save the name Hamilton and Jefferson for sentence 2. Okay, and this is where you present Hamilton or Jefferson's point of view. This is the document evidence. This is where you present their argument. Okay, and then third bullet, it says provide evidence from the early republic, and it says in parentheses Sedition Act. No, not the Sedition Act. That's wrong. This would be, well, again, it depends on your point of view. Do you agree with Hamilton? Then this is where you talk about the national bank, the whiskey tax, the tariff, assumption of state debts, those 4 things. And you don't have to talk about all 4. And then you analyze it. You say why this was the correct point of view, whether you agree with, oh, if it's Jefferson, you should definitely talk about the Whiskey Rebellion. The Whiskey Rebellion. Okay. And then synthesize whatever your synthesis wants to be. In the next paragraph, I mean, it's the same thing, except this is the side you disagree with. So you're going to say in your topic sentences, let's say you disagree with the Federalists. The Federalists incorrectly argue that taxes were warranted and that debt was good. But now what you have to do is present the point of view of the person you disagree with and somewhat defend it before you refute it. You gotta prove it before you disprove it. So side you agree with, provide some document analysis. Again, that 3rd bullet there is wrong. Refer to Sedition Act. Don't refer to the Sedition Act. Scratch that. This is you refer to something that we've talked about here. Whiskey tax, assumption of state debts, the National Bank, Whiskey Rebellion, whatever. Okay? But then you need to rebut the argument. You got to say, but this is wrong, cuz. And what you're going to do here is use a second historical piece of evidence. Let me remind you of Ethan's brilliance. Okay? Here, Ethan, rebut my argument. Taxes are bad. Whiskey tax led to the Whiskey Rebellion.
But you need taxes to run the government.
Yeah, but isn't it true that taxes perceived as dangerous are led by resistance, are met with resistance? And look what happened in the French Revolution. Come on, French Revolution. That's in Jefferson's. French Revolution. Jefferson said, my God, look what's happening. No, wait. No, that was sorry. Don't put, why are you writing French Revolution? What are you doing? That was my fault. Anyway, yeah, taxes are necessary, and to the rebuttal of, yeah, but they lead to rebellion, Hamilton would say, well, then you got to squash the rebellion. You can't say we shouldn't tax because people might not like it. Imagine parents that had attitude. We can't punish Billy. He might get mad. Give him the keys to the car. Okay, there. Now Billy isn't mad. Billy's happy. You know who runs that house? Billy. Billy runs that house. And what a delightful house I bet it is. Okay? If the U.S. government says, gee, what we're doing right now might lead to rebellion, so let's not do it, that's weird logic. That's a government that's not in control of its own country. Right? You cave to all rebellions? Weird. Okay. So 2 more paragraphs I'm now assigning you. Just a reminder, I've got these Blue Book sample things right here. Eventually, you'll have an intro and a conclusion to also write.
Okay, so there's a synthesis in every paragraph.
Right. Oh, good question. No, you don't need to synthesize twice. Just once.
Oh.
Yeah, just once. Synthesize either in the first one or the second one. Okay? That's part of your world. Any questions? You might be asking, like, well, okay, when's this due? I don't know. Monday? How's Monday? Sure. Okay, why don't you return to your original spots? Let's talk about tomorrow so you're ready.
Definitely headaches. I always like that's my experience. Like if I say I have a headache, that probably means like I'm just trying to stay up. Because I didn't do my homework or something.
I was like, do I not get to?
Yeah.
No, you don't get no. I just get to stand. That's fine. I'll just stand directly behind you.
Okay, tomorrow. Bus rolls at 8:45. 8:45. Which means that you do go to your advisories. You are marked for attendance. Do you even want to go to your first mod? That's fine. But be in the lobby by about 8:30.
9:35-ish. Yes, dude. Yeah, come here. I'll be in the lobby. Just see you in the lobby. Okay, you're excused all day tomorrow, right? But I do want you to go to advisory, and then from there, just go ahead and go to the lobby. And if you don't go to your first mod, fine, but don't be disruptive, right? Other students have school, while we have. Well, of course, this is school.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we hit the road, Jack, and we go to the U. How many of you have been on campus before? Oh, really? Wow. Why?
We did the college student around like freshman year.
Oh, you went to the U. Okay, all right. So it's a huge campus and like the Central Mall there, which was designed to mock the National Mall, right? So you know what I'm talking about? That one grassy area with the Union on one side and the theater on the other. It's supposed to remind you of Washington, D.C. Anyway, so we'll go and sit down in this rather large room, and we'll be shown this video, and then probably divide into thirds, and we'll have 3 groups touring the campus. And then eventually they'll drop us off at the Memorial Union, and we'll get a class group photo with Goalie Gopher, right?
Yeah.
And that'll be on the school web page. We do things at Somerset High School. See public tax money well spent. Okay, and then we'll actually, if you know campus, we'll actually cross the bridge, the big bridge. Okay, and then I'll give you a quick tour of the West Bank, because that's where we'll be next spring. So I just want to say, okay, when the bus drops with us, go into that building, and I'll show you where to go. And then the bus will pick us up, and then we'll go to lunch. If you bring a 10 spot, you'll be fine. $10, you'll be full. Dress warmly. It's supposed to not get above 36 degrees tomorrow, and we will be outside. 36. It'll be sunny, but cold. So bring a little hat. Okay. Also, we'll spend a little bit of time in the gift shop if you want to buy some gold gopher stuff, a scarf or a hat or whatever. Okay, everyone square. We'll be back here before school ends tomorrow.
Cool.
So you won't miss, although I don't think is there anything athletic going on? All of our fall teams are done.
I
think. Is there any sort of open gyms starting? Boys or girls, basketball, anything?
We have musical rehearsal.
Musical rehearsal. Okay. Any questions about tomorrow? It's an easy day. There's nothing. You don't have to take notes or anything.
Take notes.
What time? What? Let's see here. 1-ish. Yeah, if you want to bring a snack, we won't eat till 1-ish. Yes, dear. Do you have to what?
Oh my God.
No, the money you paid for the bus ride. I'll talk about Casetas tomorrow, but if you've never been to Casetas, you walk in, and if you take an immediate right, you get pizza, or you can go straight and get subs, Italian dishes, beautiful salads, and then what you do is you get your tray and you go upstairs to eat, and it's huge. Wow. And it's really good. You go upstairs to eat, and they even have a little market there